Welcome back to another episode of Life After Corporate, my friends. And if you're new to our show, you know what I'm going to say. Welcome home. This is where we support you to the ends of the earth in making this transition from corporate leader to entrepreneur. And today we're going to tackle one of the biggest questions and one of the biggest conundrums that women entrepreneurs have, especially when you come from corporate, where marketing was handled by a team of other people. You didn't have to be visible. You didn't have to command your own social media. And it's a little bit overwhelming because you know that, or you feel that you have to be everywhere all at once in order to be known in your field. And today we have a very special guest. Mariana Henninger is the founder of Brand Magnetic. She's an Emmy award-winning filmmaker obsessed with emotion-led marketing, and she's also the host of Empire Secrets digital marketing podcast. She helps founder-led, mission-driven brands accelerate trust, increase sales by turning cold audiences into loyal clients using a single 3-minute brand video system at the top of your funnel. Welcome to Life After Corporate, Mariana.
Deb, I'm such a big fan of yours, so this is going to be a fun conversation. I just know it.
I'm so excited. And you're the second entrepreneurista that I have interviewed this week. So we follow each other in different circles. So we're both part of the Entrepreneurista League. And you've heard me say before, if you're not part of a community of other women founders, then get yourself one, because this is a lonely journey without friends to share and learn from along the way. So today we're going to talk about how you can leapfrog, I think it might be a good word, leapfrog this feeling of heaviness, this feeling of resistance that many of us have to being seen. I especially see that with a lot of women entrepreneurs who are over 50 and who didn't grow up necessarily with cell phones in their hands and taking selfies and aren't as comfortable in front of the camera. So let's talk about this whole system that you've created that you say creates instant trust with your clients.
Yeah. Deb, I think you pointed to a major pain point that a lot of entrepreneurs have, or new entrepreneurs, seasoned entrepreneurs. Most of them, like you mentioned, don't have a full marketing team, content team. And that's what we're constantly being bombarded with, like gurus left and right. The thing is to shout above the noise right now. There's so much noise. There's so much content. There's so much AI content that we're familiar with and that we typically tend to dislike more and more, or tend to be very acute at identifying. And it's a turnoff for a lot of people for a reason. And that is the directive that we're given, that in order to stand out, you just have to be even more present. You have to compete on volume. And not only is that a pain point for people who are not used to doing it, like you mentioned, or don't have the marketing teams that are taking on this heavy load, this constantly feeding the machine. But it can also speak to you whether you enjoy that part of your business and that you know what, I like creating content. I wish I had more time, but I like doing it. And there are definitely people like that who have worked with me, who come to me where that's not necessarily a pain point that they have in terms of not liking to do that. It's just typically time is a pain point across the board.
Yeah.
But I would say that across the board, what entrepreneurs want is not to have to shout, not to have to compete in terms of how do you become the undeniable go-to in your niche. You don't want to have to compete for that. You just want people to know, right? If you wave a magic wand, you want people just to know who you are, know what you stand for, know what you're about, know your mission, know why you're different, and why you're the undeniable go-to for your perfect client. They want to do that, again, without shouting above the noise. And they also want to accelerate sales, right? If you're in business, the thing that you want is not just sales. You want sales faster, because you can actually make the same amount of sales as you did 3-4 years ago or last year. But if you made that same amount of sales in a shorter amount of time, my friend, you're making more, right?
Yeah.
And so you don't have to necessarily increase your prices. You don't have to necessarily, again, change a ton about your business if you are making faster sales. So at the end of the day, the goal of the system is how can I accelerate this process? How can I make people ready to buy from me before I've even sold them on anything? It's the principle that Robert Cialdini talks about in his book, Persuasion. It's this idea that, imagine yourself at a party where there's a ton of strangers around. One person, maybe the host, or maybe somebody who has clout or who knows a lot of people there. The difference it makes between you introducing yourself kind of cold to a person that you've just met and know nothing about them either, that you don't know anything about each other, versus that person that you know at the party who comes to somebody else and say, "Oh my gosh, you have to meet. Okay, Deb is amazing. You should totally go into her program. She helps so many entrepreneurs that are coming from corporate and wanting to build a business or are already building a business and wanting to scale." That sort of pre-selling that happens before you've even said a word is what I have tapped into. It's this sort of, again, top of funnel, the people who meeting you for the first time, cold audiences who know nothing about you, but they are curious because you've commented on something, or you do have a piece of content that's interesting and they're intrigued, or somebody mentioned you somewhere. The very next thing they do, Deb, is what?
Go to
They
your
go
website
and they
or your
exactly, they check you
LinkedIn
out.
or both.
Exactly. So they're either on your socials or on your website. Typically, it's one of those two.
Mm,
Socials could be your LinkedIn or your Instagram, depending on
mhm,
where people are hanging out the most. That's what they're doing. They are checking you out in the privacy of anonymity.
mhm.
You don't know who they are. They don't want you to know who they are, but they're basically assessing, like, is this person worth paying attention to? Are they worth following? And then if I do follow them, am I actually going to pay attention when they show up time and again on my feed or in my inbox, right? And that is a vertical that I own that so few people talk about. And it's the idea of this instant trust test. We're basically trying to gather as much information about this person as quickly as possible. So in this moment where people are making that assessment of whether you are worth following, whether you're worth paying attention to when you do show up, that is the moment that you need to grab them. That's the moment that you need to make that really instant connection. You need to position yourself as the undeniable go-to in your field. And the way that I do that, the way that we do that is by understanding how to introduce yourself, how to use your story in a way that speaks directly to people. So very different from sort of your origin story. It's not a marketing video. It's not something that has a call to action at the end. It literally just feels like you're watching a mini trailer about this person that gets you so excited to follow them, that makes you feel like the 4 trust triggers that I talk about. I'm happy to go into those
Yeah, we'll go into
more.
those in a bit.
Yeah.
Mhm. So
And
this is so interesting because we know from facts that people need to have 20 to 40 interactions with you before they decide to make a purchase. That can take 6 months of sort of
mhm,
lurking behind the scenes, which is what you're alluding to. Or as Daniel Priestley says, people on average need to consume 7 hours of your content.
yeah.
But in a time where trust is at an all-time low and skepticism is at an all-time high, and that there are hundreds of other people, if not
Oh,
thousands,
yeah.
who are positioned exactly the way you are. So this is something that was a huge pain point for me last year, started last year, continued into this year, is that people would come to me and say, "Deb, I've invested so much in
Mm,
coaching. I've invested tens of thousands of dollars in hiring coaches and I have nothing to show for it." And here's the truth. There's dozens of other people who are less talented
oh,
than
yeah.
you are, who have less capability to deliver on the promises that they are making. But by the very fact that they're bolder and they're more visible, they are the ones who are showing up on social media. They're the ones that are racking up those 20 to 40 impressions and those 7 hours worth of trust.
Yeah.
And you're missing out. And so I just wanted to really emphasize and support that point that you're making, that now is a time where, the quick wins, even when they're referrals. So just because someone has been referred to you does not mean that they are locked in to buy from you.
Oh, yeah.
And more people are doing due diligence and they're interviewing multiple service providers. So I just wanted to support that. So now I would love to dive into those 4 trust triggers, because that's very intriguing to me, because I know there's certain false beliefs that buyers have. So I'm really interested to hear how we flip that script and turn them into
Yeah.
trust triggers.
I love what you said, Deb. You're absolutely right. The stats have been around for a long time. I would argue that number increases over time
Yeah.
in terms of hours of exposure, in terms of number of touch points, because, as we talked about, there's so much more noise out there. There's so many more people offering seemingly the same thing that you're offering. And so how are people going to differentiate? And I do think some people do a better job than others of building a really remarkable standout brand. It takes a long time to do that. But I think even if whether you or not, you have your brand figured out, there's a human connection to be had the moment that people meet you. And once you nail that, you can be forgiven for not having all of those other pieces in place. You don't have to play the long game anymore. You're playing a different ball game. Think about the way that we interact with our friends or people, even people that we've met in real life. When they show up on our feed, we pay so much more attention to those people because we've created a connection with them.
Yeah.
How much more so when you're creating that connection very intentionally by hitting the 4 trust trigger. So preamble to get to the nugget of this, right? So how do I do this? How do I take my story? What if I don't have a fantastical story? What do
I feel
how the
that
heck
way
do I
all the
make people
time. I
care?
feel like if I look at my life, I
Yeah.
feel like it's relatively boring.
Yeah.
It's just like, and I keep thinking I meet all these people who have these fantastic stories of,
Mm,
triumph and survival and success and
right.
adventure and all of these things. So, so I'm really interested to
Like, how do I do this,
how do you
right?
do
How do
it?
I make my story actually move the needle in
Yeah,
my business? So we have to think about there are 2 types of stories. So I'll get to that in a second. I could almost do that first, but I really want to hit on the 4 trust
yeah,
triggers because that applies across the board, regardless of what story you have. And I'll give you examples, Deb, of people who did not have these incredible, like adventurous journey, hero's journey type stories. In fact, the hero's journey should not be in our vocabulary when we're talking about marketing in such tiny, amounts
yeah,
of time. And so the 4 trust triggers are this. This is it's all based on how you need somebody to feel by somebody, your ideal client who's visiting your page, your website, your social, right? Because this is our brand trust video is pinned on the top of your social media profiles. It shows up on your site. So what do people need to feel after watching this 3-minute video? They need to feel one, that you get them on a very deep level, right? It's all about them, by the way. So it's
yeah.
your story, but just like any good marketing, it's all about how they feel. You get them deeply, meaning I feel like I'm going to preach to the choir here, and I feel like if you've been learning from Deb, this is not going to be any news to you, but it's way deeper than a superficial level of like, I understand your pain points, I understand your desires. Like it goes way deeper than that, right? What's keeping them up at night? What's really moving them to want to solve this deep gut thing that's bothering them, and what do they actually want to achieve with that? What is the actual end result? Is it freedom to spend time with their family, freedom to decide what they want to do with their time because they've optimized XYZ, because they've solved XYZ.
Mhm.
So you get them, your specific niche people.
Yeah, and, going really deep, what's the shame that they're afraid to admit out loud?
Yes, what are
When
they
you
not
hit
telling
that
anyone
vein,
that you know about? Yes.
exactly.
Very good. I love that one. Number 2 is that you care about them. And I feel like this is where the trust deficit lies. This is the time that we're living right now. I have been burned by high ticket coaches. You just described a student who's been burned. Like across the board, this is happening over and over and over again, making people distrust even more. Right. So if I am looking at great copy, I am such a savvy marketer, especially after I've been sold
Yeah.
to and fell for a program that was definitely not worth the crazy amounts of money that I paid for it. But it helped me actually, I thank God for that experience because it helped me feel what distrust feels like. It put me in that place of distrust so that I could understand how to overcome that. So it was a game changer for my business when I went through that process. But I wish it upon no one. And funny enough, it's like one of the most commented on and shared posts on my Instagram is when I tell that story of having been burned by a high ticket coach.
Wow.
Um, and so you care about your people, you care about the person who's watching. And the way that we demonstrate that is not making them feel like they're a number on our Stripe screenshot account, right? Or the screenshot of our Stripe account. They should not feel like a number on a spreadsheet or a name on a spreadsheet with like a counter next to it. Like, how long is it going to take for this person to buy? How many follow-ups did I need to have? They shouldn't feel like a lead. They shouldn't feel like they're just, part of your sales ecosystem. They should feel like you care about them individually as people, and you care more than growing your business. You care about getting them an actual result, right? You care about what's in it for them just as much as you care about your bank account, right? So that level of care and humanity should come right through in your brand video. The third trust trigger is that you've got them. So this is where the authority and the expertise comes in. This is where the experience comes in. This is typically the pillar that we focus more on in our content. When you're like showing up as the expert, make sure you can teach from expertise and from authority. And I think that pillar is very important. I frankly don't want to spend a ton of money investing on someone who doesn't know what they're doing. I want somebody with proven experience, with the case studies, with the testimony, like with that, platform and I want the experience, right? I want to know that I'm in good hands. And so the feeling that actually comes from that is the feeling of relief, right? When your audience can feel like that you've got them and that they're in good hands, they're going to pay and they're going to go like this. They're going to be excited and they're going to go, oh, God,
Yes.
I found
It's
my
relief.
person.
Yeah, I feel safe.
Yep.
I feel safe. I
Absolutely
feel
safe.
taken
Yes.
care of. I feel
Mhm.
supported. Exactly.
Right. So we're now moving that to the feeling that they have after buying from you, after 6 months of interacting with you and reading from you and listening to you. We're now shifting that feeling to the beginning of the funnel. Like, oh my gosh, this person has, like, I haven't bought from them yet, but I know I want to. Like, I'm halfway there.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's trust trigger number 3. They need to feel like you've got them. Trust trigger number 4 is that we actually vibe. We like each other. Like, I like you. I like you as a person.
Yeah.
And I can see myself learning from you and enjoying that process. I can see myself loving the journey of getting to the results that you promise. And you can't take that away from the experience. I think there are people in the world. I'm not going to say everybody buys based on vibe alone. And it's not vibe alone, right? It's one of the
Right.
4 triggers. But I do feel like less and less people are just spending money on proven results, like get me these results or money back, and this sort of, I hate to say it, but like more bro
Bro
marketing
marketing.
vibe.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think I don't want to
Bash
single
the
out the
bros.
men. I think,
No, there's a precision in the marketing that the bros do that is worth learning from. But the tactics of the communication
yes.
doesn't vibe with feminine buyers.
Or again, and I've seen male buyers, right? I've had male clients. I think it's across the board, regardless of your gender. Do you want to work with people where you actually enjoy learning from them? Yes or no? And that's all that is, right? And I have seen plenty of amazing marketers where I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm really intrigued by this. Like, they're selling to me really well. And I would 100% buy from them, but I don't actually like this person. Like, our values don't align. Right. And this is where a lot of buyers, like, there's so much data around how people are making buying decisions based on whether there's alignment in values. Right. So I don't want to build a business Hormozy style. Like, I really appreciate the man, but I don't want to live like that. I want to buy from somebody who's built their business spending time with their family and being able to like scale a business that doesn't require working 24/7. Right. So we're looking for things that in their values that align with us. And a really important concept, Deb, that I talk about is, again, when we look at that timeline of 6 to even 12 months, some people say it takes to build that trust over time. What we're doing is, again, showing up typically showing up a lot as the authority only.
Mhm.
When we are adding little bits of our personality, because we're told to do that, right? We're told to sprinkle a personal anecdote here and there and a little bit of your behind the scenes of your life. What we're doing is basically microdosing our audience. Because at the end of the day, what they're actually gleaning from every piece of content, whether it's personal or whether it's authority, is they're trying to piece together who you are. They're trying to piece together, like, what would that look like to actually work with this person? And I think that we misjudge the fact that it can be quite easy and fast to be able to tell whether somebody's credentialed, right? Whether they're
Oh,
an
yeah,
actual authority or not.
absolutely.
That's
Yeah.
so fast. That's
Yeah,
the
let's
easiest thing.
ask a secondary question, and I just
Exactly.
wanna just interject a story here
Yeah, go ahead.
because of last year and me hearing so often, "Oh, I can't hire another business coach. I've invested so much in business
Mm,
coaches." I started reaching out to my network, but I said, "I'm interviewing business coaches, and I would love to see, learn from you and, what you do and network together."
mhm.
And Mariana, I have to tell you, I was absolutely shocked and appalled at what was behind the label of business coach.
Oh,
For
wow.
for most of the time, they were people who had taken one course
Mm,
and who were rehashing someone else's material
sure.
and had absolutely no business building background. So
Mm,
that whole piece of due diligence, I think now people are wise to that. And
mhm.
they're checking the credentials, checking the testimonials, checking the proof much more intently than ever before. And so, I think this is just an important point to make that you can't always trust the marketing. Like you mentioned,
No.
that,
Mhm,
you're always impressed by someone's really great marketing, but is that someone, number one, whether they have the credentials or not, do you like them? Do you really want to work with them? Do you feel safe with them?
mhm,
And can you feel seen in their rooms? Because a lot of
mhm.
these big, super big coaches have huge rooms, and you're a number, like you said, you're
Yeah,
a number on that
absolutely.
Stripe account. And then the second thing is, what is that background? So how in this 3 minutes we pull all of this together? Because,
Yeah.
we think of 3 minutes as something that's really short, but when people are making impressions in 3 seconds, 3 minutes
Oh,
is
yeah.
a really long time. So how do, number one, you even keep people engaged for 3 minutes? And two, what can people learn in a 3-minute segment?
Great question, Deb. And I'll answer with this. We're told over and over, we kind of get hammered this idea that, people have the attention span of a goldfish now. Like it's just a seconds game. If you don't grab them and if you don't, change your shot every 2 seconds and dance around and like add a ton of effects and a ton of music, that they're not going to stay. But at the same time, this is a generation that's binge watching more than ever, right? That we watch hour-long series on Netflix, one after the other, because we love to. We love a great story. Humans have always loved great storytelling. I won't go back to the cave days. We all know that. And so it really is about taking them on this journey, which sounds so cliche to do. But in scientific terms, in neuroscience terms, it's called narrative transportation.
Mm,
And what that means is when you can grab somebody out of what they're doing right now and bring them along with you so that they're experiencing and feeling the same things that you're feeling. In fact, neuroscience explains that the wavelengths even match. Like my wavelength telling a great story, not just any story, but a great story in a great way will match the listener's wavelengths. And this is amazing. Like we can control our cold audience's wavelengths and feelings and engagement in the most beautiful, like deep soul way, not just if they commented or liked our post. And so it's really understanding how to take them along on this journey that's meaningful to them. At the end of the day, once again, and I say it many, many times, your story is not about you in this moment. You have all of the rest of your marketing to tell all of your other anecdotes and stories. In this one, we're focusing on which story and how to tell it in a way that's going to actually move them to keep watching, to be immersed and indoctrinated. I don't even know if I like that word, but I heard it a couple times the last 2 days and I was like, okay, I get it. It's a little tricky. Anyway, We really want them to be immersed in how we're making them feel. So at the end of this video, again, they're just compelled to take action without being told to take action. They're compelled to pay more attention. They're compelled to sign up. They're compelled to buy, perhaps. But we've moved the needle. We move them so much more forward in that customer journey. And the
Yes.
way that we do that is by looking at our stories. There are two different types of story. Mm. I've not met a single person whose story does not fit into one of these types. And it's a little bit tricky because one of the types of stories, I'll just tell you what they are. They're overcome story and passion story. And now what happens with a lot of my students and my clients, they're like, wait, do I have an overcome story? Do I have a passion story? Because I'm very passionate about, you should definitely be passionate about what you do in business. So in a way, they're both passion stories, but for the purposes of like, how do I tell this? Like, in which story is actually going to work the best for my audiences? You just have to it's very simple. You just have to take a look at whether you feel like you helped somebody overcome a difficulty or a challenge that you once had, right? So that's clearly the overcome story. Do you have a story of what your life used to be? Something happened, and now you have a new life. And then at the end, by the way, the structure that we follow is we pivot to your mission. Your mission is
Mhm.
obviously what you do now to help other people in that situation.
Mhm.
And by the way, that is the hero's journey shrunken into very, very simple steps. There's basically a before, something shakes up, there's a turning point there. And then you have an after of that event. And now you can't help but help other people. That's the pivot to your mission.
Mhm.
Your passion story is a little bit different. It works if you are helping other folks. Not necessarily, everyone's obviously overcoming a problem, but I think of service providers typically fall in this space where if you have a graphic designer or somebody who offers bookkeeping services, or, they're typically services where we're not getting a full transformation of that person's entire life or that problem that's very intimate to them, which a lot of coaches will fall into that, whether it's a, career related or not. And then in the service provider space typically falls under passion story. Let me ask you this. Would you prefer to work with somebody who, is really great at what they do and has good marketing? Well, I'm thinking maybe like a graphic designer, right? Um, or would you prefer to work with somebody who's really great at what they do and you happen to know that they've been obsessed with design since they were little kids, right? Or since they were young and they've always looked for patterns and they've always tried to solve these problems, with design and look at these amazing, like I am so drawn to, I'm magnetized. And this is, obviously why I call my business brand magnetic. We're magnetized to people who are passionate about what they do and that have these instances where they can show that how much they love this thing from early
Yeah.
on, or in all these creative ways.
And, what I love about all this, and I'm gonna cycle back to, the vibration, the
Mm,
energetic exchange, and people vibing with you and being at that level. So communication is energy, and you mentioned
mhm.
magnetic, right? So the heart is magnetic, our thoughts are electric, right? So we are piezoelectric beings ourselves. We
Yeah,
generate electricity, and that's through the thoughts, through the concepts, and through who we are. And the passion is the heart. And so when you're operating from a place and of heart and mind, which is what
yeah,
entrepreneurship is, it's taking the strategy, but then putting it through that flow of passion into the market. That's when you stand out as a market of one and you are
yeah.
that ultimate authority. So before we leave, because we're running out of time, I'd love to leave our audience with, um, wow, how do they get an Emmy award winning videographer producer to actually produce their 3-minute brand video? Like, what is that like? How do people start to work with you? Where can they learn more from you?
Yeah, thanks for asking. I love working with people who are aligned. I actually was just telling somebody the other day, I don't take clients who I don't want to further their business. So, and I feel like, we attract similar kinds of people, Deb. So
Mm.
your crowd would probably feel right at home in my world as well. There are two different ways that we work with folks. One is like you described, where we kind of take over and do everything. My team and I do everything soup to nuts to create not just this video asset, but really install this trust accelerating system throughout their funnels, throughout their business. So it works for you 24/7, even when you're not showing up, even when you're not around. People are being introduced to your brand all the time, right? And the length of this podcast, there have been tens, maybe hundreds of people meeting you online for the first time, and you're not there. You're listening to this podcast right now. Anyway, so we have that offer, which is the brand video signature offer, but we also have a program called the brand video system. So for those who are not quite ready to work with us and just have it all done for them, we teach you the system that we work with our clients, and you can do this on your phone. So it's basically how to tell your story, which story is actually going to move the needle, and how to film it in a way that's beautiful but very, very simple on your phone, so that you can just create this asset for yourself. And when you're ready, you can replace it with it done for you, with something a little bit more sophisticated and cinematic, and obviously where I'm involved a lot more. But the best way to connect is if you're on Instagram at Brand Magnetic. Very easy to find me on LinkedIn as well, and I'm sure you'll have links for folks in the show notes. But yeah, just DM me, start the conversation. I have a bunch of free resources on my website on how to just start thinking about your story. Whether or not you're ready to invest in the program, you can just grab one of those resources and start really thinking about how you're introducing yourself. What do you have on your About Me page? That's the second most visited page on your website, by the way. So it's really important real estate.
Yeah, really important real estate. And, for members of the Life After Corporate community, that would be a really great resource for you to get started. And Mariana would love to bring you into the Life After Corporate community too, which is our private container of women who are just launching their businesses so that they
Mm,
can really get in touch with their story. It's hard to read the label from inside the jar. And so
yes.
it's very helpful to have someone who's on the outside, who's an expert, asking you the right questions, sort of pulling out the jewels of that story and weaving it together into a cohesive whole that would resonate with your ideal client audience. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us, Mariana.
Thank you, Deb. I really appreciate being on, and it was a blast.
Yeah, it's always fun. It's always fun being on Life After Corporate. Our guests always say that. And this is so important, my friends. This is a time where trust is the new currency. And I wouldn't have said that 5 years ago.
Mm,
If we were in 2020, everyone was selling everything, and it was much easier. It was a much easier world back then. Right now, there's a lot of shifting, there's a lot of changing, there's a lot more fear, the market's more crowded. It's hard to know who to trust. So having a strong personal brand, business brand, having a strong video, because everything is video right now. All the major platforms are optimizing for video. And I know it's not my most favorite thing in the world. So if that's what you're thinking, I don't like video, I don't like being on video, I don't like seeing myself on video, let's all take a deep breath and get over it. So reach out to Mariana at brandmagnetic.com. All the other good links and goodies are in the show notes. That's it for now, my friends. We'll see you next time on Life After Corporate.